All right, good morning, good afternoon to both the MTech Consortium and the MCDC and CWMD. I'm Rick with MTech and happy to have with us today folks from Grant Engine. They're going to actually be doing a three-part webinar series on how you maximize success with non-dilutive funding. I'll introduce Sam and then he can introduce his colleagues as he goes throughout the presentation. As always, please, feel free to raise your hand, come on camera and on mic if you have a question, or put it in the chat, and we can, we've got staff that can help answer those questions as we see fit. So with that, Sam Titlow is the CEO and founder of Grant Engine. It's a proven model of delivering funding to leading life science companies through NIH, SBIR programs, as well as DARPA, BARDA, and other DoD sources. I look forward to this webinar. Sam's a great guy. I've known him for a couple of years now, and we should have a very eventful webinar here. So with that, Sam, please.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rick, for hosting. Appreciate everyone's participation. Joining me on the call here live is Eric Tam, a product funding executive, and June Wang, who's one of our esteemed program managers. So as Rick mentioned, we've got this event today as the first in a three-part series. So we're going to hit really the pro tips and pitfalls. We'll touch on AI a little bit, but we're going to really focus on what works that is durable strategies. And I'm going to try and keep my slides to 40 to 45 minutes, leave time for questions. If questions come up along the way, definitely start on the chat, and we'll answer them live if we can, via comments. If not, I can answer them via the webinar. So it's really great to see everyone. We've also got in the audience Dr. Rich McKay, who is our Director of Program Management. And we've also, I'm just noticing, some good long-standing friends and partners of Grant Engine that we go to market with. So again, there's the agenda for the series. Today, we're going to do an overview of what Grant Engine is, why and how we do our work, talk about the benefits of getting funding, and really focus the meat of the discussion around pro tips and pitfalls, and then go through additional backgrounders of what we have learned works well over the years. And I'll start with what's happened in the last 9 days, and especially in the last 48 hours with some directives from the current administration. So the magic at Grant Engine really happens with most of the people that are not on this call. We have over 70 people that are top flight and really aligned with our mission, which is to save lives. We do that for medical advancements in many domains, and we really save lives by getting you and our clients funding to get products in market that improves the standard of care and extends the length. So it's to save lives and extend the length of a quality life. And we'll walk through a little bit about how we do that, but the takeaway is our win rate is 2x to 4x better than the national average. I will also, to ground us, I've got a few slides on just some context, and in the broad array of where money can come from, non-dilutive funding is among the very best. And unless equity is flowing fast and heavy, which it hasn't for a few years now, grant funding provides an excellent source of both return on investment, where there's no better ROI than spending a little bit amount of money internally or with a partner to get 2 to 3 million, or at a zero, 20 to 30 million. And importantly, that funding is obviously non-dilutive. We also see an absolute benefit from having validation from the Department of Defense, from NIH, other agencies, that equity investors like to see, strategic partners like to see. grants can take some time, but if you've ever gone down the road of equity fundraising, it's as fast or can be faster than raising equity. And importantly, the act of writing down your product is tantamount to success. It will help you realize success in your product. We've got a lot of excellent references and client testimonials, some of which are on this slide. And we benchmark ourselves every cycle, which is, we count that 3 times a year as to how we are performing in our clients' eyes. And we get regularly excellent feedback around being a trusted partner. And that's how we think about our work internally and how we think about working externally. Okay, turning our attention to recent events. I'm certain all of you are aware that on Monday, the current administration issued a directive to halt all grant funding and stop all disbursements of funds for any federal grant program that exists across the board, from Head Start to NIH funding. We posted on that and had a triage about and that was supposed to come into effect 5 p.m. on Monday. That order from the White House was reviewed by a judge and then ruled unlawful in their view. And as a result, that directive did not come into play. But it does certainly call into question about the future of these programs and their persistence and durability. And what you see here is a snapshot of our blog, which is up on Grant Engine's website. And it talks about that first snapshot that I mentioned about what happened recently, but more importantly, the medium-term outlook about the viability of grant funding in general under the current administration. And there's really 2 points in that regard that are worth noting. I believe saying what's going to happen is very difficult, especially about the future, which is a Yogi Berraism. But we believe that these programs will persist. And the first fundamental reason for that is these programs, from MTech's excellent repertoire of solicitations, its relationship with key elements of the armed forces, the NIH, ARPA-H, many, all federal programs, whether it's SBIR or the MTech solicitations, drive economic growth. They drive economic advantage and keep the United States' innovation edge internally and versus other countries. That is very much aligned with the current administration's mandate and has been the case since those programs were in place for over 40 years. So there's alignment there. And if you look at history, the first Trump administration actually increased the NIH budget quite a bit. It's not exactly double what previous administrations did in Obama and Biden's tenure, but it's pretty close to being double. As well, Project 2025 is no perfect prediction, but some of the directives that have come out since the inauguration have lined up with what Project 2025 has said, and that data point inside Project 2025 on page 755, if you happen to read it, calls for an increase in the SBIR program's allocation. And I think that is in keeping with the mission of those programs and ones like it, like the MTech activities, drive economic growth, drive economic advantage. And for those reasons, I think there's a lot of data and evidence to believe that funding will continue to persist. Fully expecting changes. It's going to be choppy, but we expect that to continue. So we've got 2 polls, and given just recent events, we wanted to start, and also the ongoing need and benefit to having non-dilutive funding, we want to do the first poll, if we could issue that now, around what's the timing of when you're ready to secure funding from MTech or other sources. So if you guys could answer that as we go, I'm going to keep going, and I can see the poll questions happen. So if you guys could answer that now, we will take a look. And just for an administrative note, I am not able to see the poll just on my screen. So if we could get that pulled up or rolling.
Yeah, can June or Eric, can you see it? It should be able to complete in
Yeah.
real time. No?
I got a notice
Oh, you did. Okay.
of the question.
Yeah, I filled out the poll, but I can't see the results. So if we could just, as we
Okay,
go.
Tracy, can you publish the results then?
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Great. Can everyone see that poll quiz results? So we've got about 74%. We'll wait.
Yes.
Okay, great. And I see, Chris, you have a question. Let's
Yeah.
just.
This
Yeah,
is an easy comment. So Chris Steele from MTech, Chief of Strategy here. Just want to say that, we do have an announcement out. So your answers might be dictated on where we have a current description available for some groups versus others. And then we do rotate some topics throughout the year. So people may have answered things differently based on whether we have a current call for it. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's a good note for always staying current with MTech's postings. So yeah, I think we've landed. So not surprising, we've got about 85%, or maybe 80% or so. Sorry, I'm doing math here. I don't know how this adds up to 100, but we've got within 6 months. Oh, it's okay. It's within the row. But we've got, what I'm reading is 97% want to need to get funding within 6 months. That's not uncommon. There's a balance here, but I think we see that regularly. So that's the current take, and what we see, that there's a need for funding for sure. And I'm getting a couple of comments that, yeah, the White House has responded. So rescinding the freeze, I think that's recognized. So that is in keeping with the judge's ruling, is that they're the White House reacting, I guess, to the judicial branch, that freezing is not lawful for approved government program. So that's a late breaking news of a pretty dynamic situation. So I think fundamentally, though, programs will remain. I think things are going to change and evolve, but the economic impact that your programs make, your products make, really matter. And that is what is going to drive interest in these programs, both from a societal and an administrative mandate perspective. We see a tremendous volume of opportunities across the board. NIH, BARDA, Department of Defense, and all the constituent divisions within there. We know we've got MRDC and CWMD as part of the consortia here on this call. There's too many to name, but I think we certainly are seeing the DHA begin to have a more horizontal view in a coordinated way across the Department of Defense. So we certainly expect things to change, but again, that fundamental need will remain. And we support all of the programs inside all of these logo slides, and a number of them that you don't see as well. So let's get into the heart of a playbook that we see of what works effectively. And this approach is something that we have developed over the 9+ years Grand Engine has been in business. And it's really a 3-part harmony in how we work with our clients and how we recommend you think about positioning your product to the military, and also to other federal funding agencies. And the first is to really understand and appreciate the current standard of care or state of the art and its performance metrics, whether it's efficacy, hemostasis, speed, mechanistic performance, specificity, sensitivity on a diagnostic platform, whatever those metrics may be, really understand and appreciate where the field is today and where the field is going to be as your product hits the market. Understand the marketplace, and in particular for MTech in the context of the warfighter. And then identify and be able to articulate your differentiation. Why is your product better along the metrics that matter for that product and use case, and quantify those benefits. Those are almost certainly going to be aspirational because your product isn't built and defined yet, but that really marches towards a goal that the funding of the project will support. And it speaks to the rigor upon which you're going to measure success or failure. This differentiation matters, of course, when your product goes to market, because it is on that basis that you'll get reimbursement, that you'll get adoption or not. It turns out that's also a very effective way to secure non-dilutive funding, is being able to articulate to the audience your differentiation, why your product is better and does things that the current products on market are not able to do. This sounds quite simple, and it is not. It is difficult to really hone your product market fit and what points of performance will be the axis of competition and how and why your product will be successful in reaching those differential outcomes. And this is relevant to shape and hone in your story, and it's really essential. And then you really have to show your preliminary data and your plan for how you're going to complete or reach those endpoints to support your differentiation. So this is a strategy that I think is at one level very conceptually straightforward, but as you get into the details of how you're going to make those differential points successful, can be quite challenging. And this is where I think working with external partners can help, of really refining that story, making sure it's clean as it's being heard, and that it is the right best story, as opposed to in all of our heads. That storyline and that positioning of your product is particularly essential in this slide, which is one for the DHA across the various funding agencies that are housed inside the broader Department of Defense, and other places as well. That's it, specifically. And what this slide really speaks to is that if you've submitted grants before on a pre-proposal and a full proposal, that is a lot of work. And in our experience and in our success, that really happens in the latter or the right hand, 1/3 of the build, or 1/3 to 1/2 of the real effort to create success. And that's not to minimize how intensive and difficult and important and crucially important the crafting of the proposal and writing it is. All of those things are essential to get right. And the upfront work, the work that Grant Engine does in certain cases on our own, with partners that we've had. I know some of our partners are here on this call. That partnership that we develop, where we help hone the message and that story of that right best story for the product, and articulate that to an audience of champions, and really helping to, and us directly and with our partners, and certainly with you as clients, And you can do this yourself, but building that coalition, identifying the set of champions, and then aligning your product development roadmap with those needs as defined from the agency, setting those champions, and then having formal interactions as well as informal interactions prior to getting an invitation to submit. This groundwork and the alignment from the funding source to you and your product is really mission critical. We see many, many times in the CDMRP program, for example, where they're within 1 point or half a point of getting success, but did not meet program alignment. That happens quite regularly. And what that really means is that there isn't an internal champion, or that wasn't articulated vis-a-vis the proposal. And just this thesis of really confirming alignment up front, identifying champions. The Defense Department, broadly speaking, works on a chain of command. And so the higher up you are, the more effective that can be. We have a number of proven vectors as entry points that you'll see here as links. When you get the presentation, we have our own contact list in the military, broadly speaking, that we can leverage. And I think this is really well done, following the key factors that are outlined here that you can read later. But this groundwork is really mission critical. That's also true for BARDA and ARPA-H, other areas. It's less so, although also important at the NIH for SBIR program. Having your program officer be an advocate for you at council is a significant advantage if you're on the bubble or close to it. So this playbook is something that we have honed and we've developed directly and with our partners, and it's a playbook that has been shown to work. So that's a words to the wise around what works and effectively. So a couple of key takeaways that I'll feed in as lessons learned over the years. Search for targeted solicitations. That's certainly something that MTech has done very well. And if something isn't there today, keep monitoring it because opportunities crop up regularly. So search for targeted solicitations. Notice of special interests are also relevant. They're not going to be a dramatic, this is more on the NIH side. They're not going to be a dramatic, individualized solicitation. It's more of a area of interest. It doesn't constitute its own standalone solicitation, but rather general momentum. But scour these sources. Targeted solicitations can matter. And in the military, they're essential. They're really essential. So planning ahead, you'll see this again with some data, a link to some data, but thinking through early and doing that alignment really will make a difference in how you shape your story. And rather than trying to write a grant, from scratch, having a grant thesis via bullets and honing that before you commence can save a lot of time. Also, competitive landscape evaluation, usaspending.gov, and all this is linked, has a compendium of every award that has happened and spent from the United States government, whatever it may be. NIH Reporter is a lot more targeted, but what similar products have been funded? What was the source? Who was the funding agency? What mechanism went forward? What was the program official? Identifying some blue ocean that is areas of need but has not been funded can be important. This is also mission critical for what you're up against, for what the government has already spent money on. Engage with the program official and indeed for the military, really building that coalition, building that community of support will enable your success in ways that can be transformative. Not doing this is really not taking advantage of an effective strategy, and others that are playing the game smartly will do that, and that's what you're up against. Or if you don't have those champions, you're really a step behind. And that just underlines that point. this link reemphasizes that being proactive and being early really matters. That link points to a longitudinal study that we did that quantified the win rate for a grant project if you started early and had planning and a thesis that was refined and honed. You had time to write it well, review it through a formal pressure testing process of external review, compared to you didn't. The difference is dramatic. It's over a 2x difference between those two approaches. So early matters, and you know, it's the difference between being successful and not. So this we're gonna move into so those are really some key elements. We've got additional slides here that are going to talk to a little bit about Grant Engine and some of the pearls of wisdom that we've learned specifically, and really think about the process of getting non-dilutive funding in a three-part way of finding opportunities, winning opportunities, and then managing opportunities post-award. So I wanted to start on this slide with the second poll, which is how do you currently find solicitations for your program in an optimum way? So if you could fill out that poll as we're going. We have a set protocol for finding solicitations on a per product basis. That is identified through validating those solicitations through direct and primary contact with the funding agencies and the people behind them, but also looking and scouring through a number of different mechanisms online. So we've got a little under 59, a little under 60% response. So I'll wait for a couple more seconds as this comes in. But yeah, online seems to be that work. I think we certainly see that as well. That's about 27 out of 34. I'm having fun with the percentages. If someone can figure out how those percentages work, I'd be most welcome, most appreciative. But it looks clearly how the online research certainly is a logical method and approach. And I will also say, you know, engaging in a paid search process can be useful. We have an offering, it's nominal fee, but that really will help cover the waterfront of making sure you haven't found something that is out there that could align and fit. So, okay, thanks, June. It's you can select multiple buttons, which is why the percentages aren't adding up to 100, but the parentheses are the total number of people that submitted. So, okay, that makes sense. Thanks, June. The protocol that we undertake, you know, searches for opportunities, we identify entry points and champions, and we leverage prior awardees for advice. So these are all effective ways of how we operate. Top flight team here, we go through a number of key inflection points in our process that you see here, including external review on all of our flagship work, or we offer that as a separate standalone product. We have an excellent combination of program management and lead writers, separate roles, separate activities that allow best-in-class individuals to do best-in-class work. That effort, and there's a number of things that we have done that incorporate into our process, and those really combine here to show a differential win rate of engaging with Grant Engine versus not. And this is the results of a study that we did that show whether out of a university, spin out companies, whether an academic PI wrote the grant themselves and we just submitted it, without adding any content or insight on review, but made sure it got in on time, compared to we did that submission work and we added value through writing, strategy, external review. And you can see here in this experiment that lasted 18 months, with a pretty good N, if you will, of 26 in one arm and 19 in another, over a 4x differential. And so I think that this points to our output results from the myriad details that we deliver. We've also developed over the last year, really honing a range of elements of support that are useful. We interact with a lot of companies that want to write the grant themselves, but want help doing it. So we have launched a product called Alpha, which is a very sophisticated online writing tool where you bring in essentially a specific aims page and a high-level grant thesis and all of your background material, and it will prompt you for all of the right questions for that specific solicitation. And you hone those bullets and hit go, and it will draft a first draft of your project, of your grant. And that will save that time of that first draft. So that's a pretty significant time saving. So that's an offering that we have as a standalone platform. We also, on the far right, have a full flagship offering where we do full writing, program manager support. We submit the grant, and that has been demonstrated to have that 2x to 4x higher than national average win rate. We also have a hybrid model of in the middle, where you still write the grant. You can use Alpha if you want, but we're adding some of the key elements around what we do, which is grantsmanship and doing external review. So those are a couple of key points. And we really launched these 3 different offerings. All are top flight. It really runs the spectrum on intensity of support that we're giving you and roughly cost. And we built these out really in response to one of our advantages that we do internally, which is a longitudinal analysis of what wins and kills grants. And of all of the review criteria, we have found that the technical section, which is really the approach, the actual detail of how the approach has happened, often scores the worst, and success there is highly correlated with overall outcomes. So if you do very well in the approach section of what you're going to do, which is the research and development core, right? Then you have a high degree of success in getting a project awarded. And after looking at hundreds and hundreds of these projects, we really teased out a few essential conclusions, which is, number one, emphasize how your experimental design and methods will achieve these results that you anticipate, and they want and need to be robust results. For MTech applications and more broadly DoD applications, you've really got 2 audiences. There's a technical subject matter expert, and there's a military-minded reviewer. And so the military-minded reviewer will certainly speak to impact for the warfighter and the support therein. And they sometimes will refer to them as the lay reviewer. But make no mistake, you have to pass both of these bars of success. And we have looked at, again, hundreds of projects that we've submitted, and there's one clear answer, which is in the bottom line, which is clarity, right? If you can clearly and effectively communicate a profound story that is aligned with the funding solicitations, stated interests, and those that you have found through your one-on-one homework, that if you did one thing, it would be that to drive success. rigor, reproducibility are key fundamental ingredients, as well as articulating what limitations exist in the preliminary data that you have, or the progress that has been made before. And yes, we have this plan, but if we have poor results, or if things don't go as we expect, here's plan B that we're going to go down. Those are additional elements that are quantitatively attributed to winning projects. So those are some pearls of wisdom as we go. I wanted to also, this is really I've got some additional slides on Grant Engine proper, but also besides those tactical things that you've heard, talk about some longitudinal strategies. So these are big picture strategies that work. They're unique strategies, but they work durably over time. So and I'm just seeing a question in the Q&A from Joe Tracy. I know we want to use the comments, not the Q&A, but the question is the presentation going to be available? And the answer is yes. So that's for everybody. The presentation and the recording. So these strategies are, they can interlace, but I'll walk through them as unique and individual strategies. And the first is solving this problem of, well, I need the next grant to get me money so that I can prove what I want, what the grant is asking for. And the strategy here is having funding wherever it comes from, whether you're bootstrapping it, you get that first grant, you have a seed round, you have a Series A round, of always staying one step ahead, where you're using current funds to execute and make success the current aims of the project, but you're also prepping the product for preliminary data and de-risking that product for the proposal that you're about to submit. And this is something that academics do, the good academics do artfully and quite well. There is an ethical line that you need to be very careful of as to not cross. But this idea of, well, I need the money to do the next thing of what the grant's asking for, will forever be a problem, whether you're talking to a strategic partner or a grant program official. And using whatever money you have or you're bootstrapping to de-risk and prove out what you're about to propose, and staying one step ahead is pretty critical. So that's the first strategy, and is pretty effective. So the second strategy is what we call as a platform, and this is certainly true in the NIH, but also very relevant for defense funding, which is, if you have a platform, whether that's a diagnostic platform that's useful for many different disease states, or an engine to create therapeutic drugs that combat infectious disease, or a surgical robotic platform. This idea you've got a platform, the premise here is that you would want to reduce the focus and really narrow the focus of your proposal for one specific application, indication, and use case. Your platform can do many, many things, but this is definitely true for the military. It's definitely true for NIH, that if you present your story around what significance of the problem you're solving that is specific to a disease, specific to an application, and articulate that story about the R&D you're going to do for something very specific and targeted, you actually have a shot, right? You have a much more decent shot than versus talking about your platform. The beauty of this strategy is that when you've done that very well and very specifically for that one use case, you've advanced yourself into the marketplace, but you've also created an opportunity to do it a second time for the next best use case and application, because your platform can do many things. So you pick a second opportunity to really target. You identify collaborators, you identify partners that can help adopt, you look at users and or patients and how this product is going to specifically work for that second use case or second indication. And that dramatically improves your chances because you're targeted and you're focused. And you're getting the idea. Because you have a platform, you can do that a third time, a fourth time. We've seen some of the companies that we have worked with, that I know of, that we know of over the last 15 years. I'm thinking of 3 different companies that are in the top 3 NIH SBIR recipients. And they've also gotten a lot of money from the DoD. It's easier to look at the NIH because they report out, but they're platform companies, but they didn't go to market for grant funding as a platform company. They went to market with something specific times 2, 3, 4, times 10. And they got a lot of money for both building that specific product and also building out the platform along the way. And that yielded a great product pipeline and lots of funding. The one exception would be the National Science Foundation, where they are open and interested in platforms, without preliminary data. The third strategy would be you've got equity, congratulations, and you want to use and can use non-dilutive funding to unlock some of that equity. That equity has been spent on your leading asset by definition, and that has a dollar spend that is defined and will march on. And if you apply for funding and you get it, that unlocks that equity to give you more runway, or you can apply for funding to diversify your portfolio, spending a little bit amount of money to add a second product to the pipeline. And that requires not a small amount of work, but it's a high ROI, as we discussed previously. And by doing that, you can get earlier stage assets that broaden the value of the company, diversify the pipeline of products that you have in your portfolio. That increases your value and de-risks the company in total. So that's the third strategy of you have equity or have funding that you're tracking towards, but you still play the non-dilutive funding game to open up that equity, make it last longer. Or diversify your portfolio. The fourth strategy is what we call the virtuous circle, where you've got a product that, or generally a product strategy in your company that can reach the market or show meaningful traction in a reasonable time frame, 2, 3, 4 years. And the virtuous circle is following a clock. At the top of the clock, you've architected your product roadmap, get funding for it, use that funding to advance the product and get that product in market, whether that's hitting an inflection point in a clinical trial roadmap for a pharmaceutical or a large molecule, or you have a research tool, or you have a hemostatic agent. You use that money to have impact and get results, and that shows the funding agency that you're a good bet for them to spend money on, and you articulate that in the subsequent proposal, and you're able to create that upward virtuous circle of continuing to get funding. And we've seen that work extremely well for a variety of different companies. There are other strategies as well, but time won't allow us to really go into detail on them. But those are some strategies that work, that are durable. So those are, and there are others as well that we can play on, that we can talk about. That's really what we wanted to talk about. Certainly open up to questions. I'm going to really go quickly through the balance of the slides, and we've got some time for questions, I think, if they come up live. In the spectrum of finding grants, winning grants, and managing grants, this is a quick slide that talks about our division, Grant Engine Accounting, which supports compliance. And David, I see your question. Let me do 30 seconds on these other slides, and I'll come to you. And it our accounting team is got decades of experience. We're always audit ready. We've never had an audit issue. And with federal money, staying inside the lines is really crucial. A couple of points around what make us unique and special. Certainly our team is top flight. It takes about a year to become a lead writer full-time with Grant Engine. And then every individual starts with a great grant writing track record and biotech, medtech experience. We always do a complimentary review of your tech if you want it, which we highly recommend. It's no charge, and we're really validating that this is a good use of your time and money to move forward. We do an external review. We've whittled that down to hundreds of people down to 35 excellent reviewers that are tuned into that solicitation's needs. And then, as you saw, we do primary research on what wins and kills grants and feed that back to the team every 6 months. Depth chart by disease. The blue is the team that's expert, proficient, and capable by disease area. This is not the number of total people, but the number of total grants we can write in area. And then the same aspect by technology type. If you are interested, our blog has some very useful content that is timely. Thanks for joining on the webinar. You got the late breaking news on this hour, but that's a great place to go for thought leadership and content as we go. And then lastly, if you want to take next steps, we always recommend an NDA to protect your information. This link will have a link to a product development funding survey, and that'll trigger a review with our subject matter experts. So with that, I'm going to stop. And David, I think you're up first.
Great. Thank you, Sam. Yeah, really informative. We've got a track record in the communications world with defense contracting, and have come up with a medical application of one of the things that we've been using for our own account, and have got some really good results. And the thing that where we've got a huge gap is with the FDA piece of this. So we're an enabling technology that would go in to a wide range of devices and provide a more clear view of the world, if you will. So we're basically licensing that into the device manufacturers and teaming with them right now to basically validate it. So how that works with the FDA, I'm guessing that the device manufacturers, the lead on that, they've got to have some sort of engagement with us relative to software upgrades, but I really don't know. I'm guessing you guys got some experience and aptitude and that sort of thing.
Yes, if I'm understanding, you have a software solution that improves the fidelity of a medical device. Is that right?
Yeah. And it's actually that's one piece of it. The other is we can actually, evaluate data right now that comes over without having any intervention at all.
Right on. Yeah. So I'll say three things. First, absolutely, the device manufacturer that will be filing, is going to have that IDE and be filing the de novo or a 510K with the FDA is going to be prime, and they're going to be submitting regulatory correspondence to the agency for review, and it's on them, right, to make sure that that follows the pathway for effectiveness and safety. And so being a part of that and their success will absolutely help. We're maybe I should also say we're not a regulatory consultancy, and we really recommend engaging with that. One group that's, if you're not familiar, there's a number of great regulatory consultancies in the medical device field. NAMSA is one of the better ones out there. I've got a close personal friend with their head of strategy and partnership, Tim Mitchell, who I've known for, I'll just say too long because I don't want to age myself, but NAMSA is a great regulatory team if you want to get some advice. I can put you in touch with them if you want, but there are others too. They're great. I've just used NAMSA and they're reliable. The second thing I would mention is that if you're not familiar with the software as a medical device regulatory pathway, this is for software use, not the post facto analysis. Although if you're reading out a diagnosis or a device result, or there may be some impact there, but SAMD as a regulatory pathway is still fairly new, and that's something to be mindful of because it has some different flavors that the agency thinks about. And then the third point would be definitely engage with that partner, right? That's gonna be tantamount to your success. If you're the 3M model, right, of being, you just make things much better.
Thank you. What is SAMD?
SAMD is the acronym for the FDA's regulatory pathway called software as a medical device. And they have some early guidance out there. And software as a medical device is a pathway that you can follow when you submit a device that it has software as an integral part to it.
Okay. Well, Sam, thank you very much for that overview. Do we have any other questions from the audience? I see we still got about 44 folks on board. Tracy, can you go ahead and issue that last poll question? Yep. And this is just to say that if you'd like Grant Engine to contact you, please indicate yes. So we appreciate you filling that out for them. In the interim, Sam, I'm curious, you may have talked about this a little bit, but I'd like to understand a little more about your business model and how you work with clients in terms of fees, and if you front loaded or end loaded, based on success. I think that would be beneficial to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So we always, I'm going to pull up our kind of spectrum of offerings. We always have a cash portion and we have a success fee. One of our rules, and from a philosophy and our business model, is that our upfront fees are always below our cost to serve, right? I call that upfront or the cash portion of our fees. And we do that for a very fundamental reason, which is we want to be aligned, right? So we get paid, we make a profit. Like, we lose money if we don't get you an award, and we only make a profit if you get an award. And the reason why we do that on the cash portion is that we're in this together, and we're going to give you some hard-earned advice, some perspective and insights that have taken, just our experience and time to secure. And we want you to hear that advice and know that we want to get that grant awarded just like you do, because that's how we make a profit. And so if we give you advice, and it's a conversation, and we're not certainly dictating things, but we've got we have a viewpoint that we think can really make a difference on winning a grant or not. And so we want us to work together to be able to have that alignment. So that's how we structure our engagement. And for what you're getting, we regularly hear, yeah, you guys should be charging more on the cash portion. And we also recognize that every dollar matters, right? Every cost can be low. So we're happy to talk about pricing one-on-one, but what you see here on the slide is a range of offerings that have dramatically low cash and success fees on the left-hand side. Like, you'll spend more at Starbucks, in a month than you would on Alpha, and on the cash portion, and a very nominal success fee, to, I think, tremendous value on the flagship side. So I think we recognize every dollar matters, and again, in the middle is a middle ground, but we're super conscious that every dollar matters, and that we want to be good stewards for you and with you of that dollar. So that's why we've launched this spectrum of opportunities. We use Alpha internally as well, so we're eating our own cooking.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you very much for explaining that. I think that's very helpful. I don't see any other questions in the chat. So with that, I'd like to thank Sam, June, and Eric. I missed you, Eric. I don't know where you went, but for joining us on the MTech webinar series. We appreciate it. We look forward to the next one, which will be looking at long-term company funding strategies. That's going to be February 26th. So next month, the end of next month. Next week, we'll have Michelle Lebec of Lebec IP talk about the intersection of artificial intelligence and intellectual property. So that should be an interesting one for a lot of us. We hope you'll be able to join. With that, I'm going to thank you all again. Appreciate you attending the webinar, and we will see you next week. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.